Do you like to win? Well, we do too. And we've had some recent victories here at First Liberty Institute that we want to share with you. Hi, I'm Stuart Shepard, and this is First Liberty Live. Thank you for liking and sharing our videos. Just click that little thumbs up. It goes a long ways toward helping us meet new people out there. David Hacker is an attorney with us and also our Vice President of Legal Services. Hi, David.
Hey, how you doing, Stuart?
I am good. On Mondays, for those of you at home, we have a weekly Monday all-staff meeting with the people here in the Dallas area and also our attorneys all over the country. And we pray for the week ahead and things that are going on in the ministry and also for people that we know that we need to pray for. And then after that, we hear from each division of the organization. And this week, I heard David go through a list of all the things that have been happening in the legal area. And I really wanted to have him on to share that with you because I thought you'd want to know too. So David, let's talk about some of the victories that we've seen. This is all good stuff that we're hearing this week. First, let's talk about a church that just wanted to be able to use a building that they already owned.
Yeah, that's right. We had a great victory on behalf of Anchorstone Christian Church. This is a Taiwanese and Chinese American church in Santa Ana, California. They were looking at some property for their growing congregation, and so they met with the city and said, "Hey, we're thinking about purchasing this property. Is there any issues, with us using it as a church?" City doesn't say anything, so Anchorstone goes ahead with the purchase, the property, and then starts submitting the normal permit requests and stuff like that you do to use the building as a church. And the city said, "Whoa, we don't allow that here."
Well,
and so, yeah,
you can't do that.
Right. And so the church said, "Well, what do you mean? We cleared this with you." And they said, "Oh, no, we don't allow religious uses in this part of town." And so, so the church was in this position where they were unable to use their building for 2 years. And thankfully, they finally contacted us at First Liberty. We went to work for them.
And tell us what happened. Describe what we won first and then what that means.
Yeah, so we partner with a law firm called O'Melveny & Myers, one great law firm out there. And we went to court and we sought what's called a preliminary injunction, which means basically a court order requiring the city to stop discriminating against Anchorstone Church. And we won that. Which was a great victory for the church. And that really set the case on the right trajectory towards an ultimate settlement with the city.
Because that's usually an indication of how the judge may rule in the future, correct?
That's right. Yeah, a preliminary injunction is usually kind of like a quick look, at the case and just looking at the facts as they are at the beginning, looking at the law. Is it more likely than not that the church is going to win? And the judge said, yeah, it is.
And in the meantime, they can move in their building, right?
That's right. They got to move into their building. And, in the end, we ended up settling this case. The city ended up paying $640,000 to the church. So just a tremendous victory for this church. And now they can use the property as they intended to when they bought it.
And that should help with some remodeling as well. A lot of people, David, live in fear right now that they're going to use the wrong pronoun in the workplace and end up losing their jobs over that. We've been representing a physician assistant who actually had that happen to her. Tell us about what's happening in that case.
Yeah, Valerie Klosterman was a physician assistant for over 17 years in Michigan. She's the kind of doctor you'd want to go see. Just had the greatest bedside manner, greatest care for her patients. She always got just great reviews from all her patients and her colleagues. Well, fast forward a few years, and this big hospital system in Michigan called Michigan Health, which is a part of the University of Michigan, took over her clinic and said, "Hey, everyone, we're going to do these gender, mutilation surgeries and these gender treatments so people can, change who they think they are." And Valerie said, "I don't believe that's right. That violates my faith." And so all she did was ask for religious accommodation. And all that means is I don't want to have to participate or serve those types of patients. And keep in mind, there's not that many of them, right? And so she said, "I don't want to make any statements that would violate my Christian faith and my medical judgment." What does the hospital system do in return? Well, their chief diversity officer called Valerie evil, blamed her for gender dysphoria related suicides, and told her she couldn't bring her Bible to work or her religious beliefs to work. And they fired her ultimately in August of 2021. Just a horrible situation for Valerie. to be in.
But now we have some good news for her. Explain what's happened recently.
That's right. So again, Valerie knew where to call. She called First Liberty. We got to work right away, filed a lawsuit on her behalf. And unfortunately, the hospital kind of played some games in the lower court and eventually asked the federal district court to dismiss the case and send it to arbitration. And we said, whoa, hey, you can't do that. And so we appealed that to the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals and got a great victory where the court said, the hospital, you waited too late to try to enforce this arbitration clause. And you can't play this game of, heads I win, tails you lose, and end up in arbitration every time. And so the Sixth Circuit said, no, this claim that Valerie's brought, it needs to be in court. She gets her day in court in front of a jury of her peers. So that's a fantastic victory for her.
And it's definitely, given the facts of the case and the way that all of us are looking at the workplace right now, her likelihood of success is much higher if she's in front of a jury that's going to understand what she's going through and have some concern for her, right?
That's right. Yeah, I think if anyone were to sit on a jury in Valerie's case, they would realize, hey, all she wanted was to be accommodated in her religious beliefs. She wasn't telling the hospital, I think you should shut this down. She said, I just want to not participate in it. You can do what you want to do, hospital, but I'm not going to do that.
And we're very happy for Mike and Valerie. This next one is on the right of churches to defend themselves. It comes out of New York. Tell us about that one.
Yeah, so a few years ago, New York actually lost a big gun control case where they tried to pass laws banning certain weapons. They lost that at the Supreme Court. Well, immediately after the court ruled, the New York legislature enacted a new law. And that one said, among other things, if you are a, quote, sensitive place in New York, then guns are prohibited. And in that list of sensitive places, they included houses of worship. So here comes along his Tabernacle Church up there near Buffalo and says, well, hey, we have armed security officers at our church. We're concerned about all the shootings that have happened at churches over the past several years. All the horrible violence has happened at synagogues, and we want to protect our congregation with some of our folks are off-duty officers, and so they want to be able to protect us and carry while they're on our property. And so his tabernacle, along with First Liberty, went and challenged the law, saying this is an unconstitutional right on our free exercise, not just our Second Amendment right to carry arms, but our free exercise right to practice our faith as we see fit at church.
And that makes it an unusual case for us to bring both a claim under the First and Second Amendments, but that's a powerful argument.
It really was. And, the really neat thing is we went out and partnered with the best lawyers in the country on Second Amendment issues, who also happen to be some of the best lawyers in the country on First Amendment issues, and that being Paul Clement and Aaron Murphy. Paul Clement, you might remember, argued our Kennedy case at the U.S. Supreme Court and won that. And so it was a real privilege to get to work with Aaron and Paul in this case, and they just did a tremendous job. And we ultimately prevailed. There were a couple of cases that were filed about this issue, all on the Second Amendment. We brought the free exercise, and we won on that issue. And we were, the ones that prevailed first. And so just a tremendous victory for religious exercise up there in New York.
Let's talk about what we won and how that plays out. What happens next?
So we ultimately won this case, and the state kind of threw in the towel and agreed to this permanent injunction against their law as it applies to houses of worship. And then, one of the powerful kind of tools that Congress has given organizations like First Liberty who file these civil rights cases is the ability to seek attorney's fees. They can be a way to deter unlawful and unconstitutional activity by the government. And so in the end, we moved for attorney's fees. We were awarded over $800,000 in attorney's fees between us and the Clement and Murphy firm. And that just is a reminder for states like New York that, if you go out and violate someone's constitutional rights, you're going to pay in the end. And your residents are going to pay taxes that have to go to fund those lawsuits, which is unfortunate. So that's why Congress created that, is to dissuade states from doing bad stuff like this.
We've got a number of cases in play right now that deal with the public expression of faith. And one of them has to do with the guy who just wants to hold up small signs that expresses faith on a sidewalk. Tell us about Ernie.
Yeah, Ernie Giardino, what a guy. He all he wanted to do was be on a public sidewalk in Chapin, South Carolina, and hold a sign which says, "Trust Christ, He paid the price." That's it. And then on the other side, it said, "He saved others, Jesus, He'll save you." Now that's that's the gospel. That's truth. But it's not out there attacking anyone. It's not hostile. It's not offensive. Well, I mean, maybe some people it's offensive to them, but he'd done this before for months. He had been out there holding a sign. And what ended up happening is the Chapin police officer came up to him and said, "Hey, you got to have the city's permission to be out here holding this sign." And it turns out we kind of did some digging after Ernie contacted us. And the permit requirement in Chapin requires 2 weeks advance notice. Okay, so you can't just go out and hold that sign today. You've got to plan that 2 weeks in advance. And you can only hold that sign for 30 minutes. And every 15 minutes, you have to move to a different corner of the sidewalk. So,
well, that's not how the First Amendment works.
My head. What's that?
Yeah. That's not how the First Amendment works. That's completely
not at all.
Antithetical to it.
That's right. That's right. So it was a severe burden on his ability to go out and share the gospel with others. And so what we ended up doing is filing a lawsuit on his behalf. We sent a couple of demand letters to the city saying, "Hey, you need to change this policy," and they wouldn't. So we filed a lawsuit, and thankfully, right away, they agreed to an injunction against their policy, their ordinance, which says, like I said, you have to have 2 weeks advance notice, and you can only be there for 30 minutes. So that's stopped for now, and we're hopeful that we'll ultimately be able to resolve this case. But it's a great initial victory for Ernie Giardino.
So he gets to hold up his signs, and that's a signal that it's more likely than not that he'll win this in the end. Am I reading it right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Very good. We also got a victory for a member of the Space Force who was giving a private speech and got called out for us. Tell us about Jace.
Yeah, Jace Yarbrough was asked by one of his Space Force colleagues to come to this man's retirement ceremony and give a speech, And so Jace bought his own ticket, got his own airfare ticket to go out there. He did it on his own time. He was not on active duty at this time. And he went to his friend's retirement ceremony. He, as he's allowed to under military regulations, wore his uniform to honor his friend. And during his speech honoring this friend, he mentioned that, the military under President Biden and Obama had kind of lost its way. It had started to engage in a lot of DEI and woke initiatives that were really counter to, what the military is intended to be there for. He quoted Alexander Solzhenitsyn, and that offended somebody in the crowd, ironically from another branch of the military. And so that person reported Jace, and then he got in trouble with his superiors. He got what's called a letter of admonishment. It doesn't sound like a lot, but for a military person, that is a lot. It can really impact your career. It can slow you down. It can prevent you from getting promotions and getting assignments that you need. And so it was really pretty devastating to Jace to have that done when he was there on civilian time.
But now we've got some good news. Tell us about the win and what it means.
Yeah. So, in this case, we partnered with a big firm by the name of Winston & Strawn and filed a lawsuit on behalf of Jace a couple of years ago. And before President Trump came into office, the Department of Defense pretty strenuously defended against what they had done. They said, no, we were right. They asked the court to dismiss Jace's case. And just recently, the court said, no, I'm not going to dismiss it. Jace's case can go forward. It's merited. And so we're really thankful for that. We're thankful that we get to present Jace's case to the court and hopefully prevail in the end and protect the right of service members to have free exercise of religion and free speech when they're not on duty. It's a critical right that we ensure that they still possess because honestly, they're willing to lay down their lives for it. And so we owe it to them to give it to them when they're on civilian status.
I've got one more for this conversation that I want to hear back from you, and that is it has to do with whether the government can tell a religious organization who it can employ and what roles they can play and all that, something the government has no business doing.
Right. Yeah, so we represent an organization called the North American Mission Board, and it partners with Southern Baptist churches, state conventions of the Southern Baptists, and others to share the gospel, care for refugees. They fight human trafficking. They support adoption and foster care. They do all sorts of things with Southern Baptist churches. And so a former executive director of one of the state conventions of Southern Baptist churches sued the North American Mission Board saying, y'all influenced my termination from my job. And, that wasn't true. But the question before the court was, could the court even get involved in this? Because this was really a dispute within a church over who can be an employee and someone that carries out the mission and the message of the religious organization. And so the district court initially threw this case out. It kind of came back around because the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals reversed that. And we ultimately went back down to the district court. And what ended up happening is we really set up just a great defense of the North American Mission Board showing, hey, this is an intra-church dispute. This is not something that civil courts are supposed to get involved in under this doctrine called the Church Autonomy Doctrine, which prevents civil courts in the United States from getting involved in religious disputes. And so we won that. It went up to the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, and we recently just got a tremendous opinion written by Judge Oldham that just really lays out the broad protections that churches and religious organizations and other houses of worship have to make employment decisions in accordance with their faith.
There are a couple of purposes for this conversation today. One is I wanted people to be able to share with us in the wins that we've had, but also to help illustrate, unlike on television dramas where, they go to court and there's a decision and that's it and you're all done. In real life, it's a series of steps that it takes to win these cases. And we have to be willing to celebrate the wins along the way toward the ultimate victory in these cases. And it's good to see those happening because it is an indication of where things are headed, right?
That's absolutely right. Yeah, we're very thankful to get these little wins along the pathway of any case because you got to win at every stage in order to win for our clients. And we're just so thankful that God has provided us with these clients and these opportunities to fight for them and to preserve religious liberty. And so these victories, whether they be preliminary victories or total victories in the end, those are ones that we are just so thankful for.
Yeah. David, I've been working at First Liberty now for about 7 years, going on 7.5. The legal team right now is busier than I've seen in the entire time I've been here. This is a very active season for the people that you watch over.
It is. Yeah. We've got over 100 matters in court or in demand letter phases, and we have a great team. We're working with just fantastic law firms that we partner with that we call our network attorneys, and they're all doing just tremendous work. And, as we've talked about today, God's been blessing that with victories that we've been able to talk about. And we're just hopeful that we will continue to have his favor in the courts and be able to win for our clients at every stage.
And we've also got a lot of new faces here in the building. Tell us about how we're adding to our team.
Yeah, we've added just a number of great lawyers recently. We've picked up lawyers from other religious liberty law firms, other friendly organizations to us. We have picked up some young lawyers who are extremely talented, who want to get in the fight for religious liberty. And we've really been able to expand our capacity to help people, which we're just tremendously thankful for that. We can't do that without our supporters. And so we feel really blessed right now. So thank you.
And we appreciate that partnership that allows us to do the work that we do. And the victories that you just talked about, if you're a supporter of First Liberty, you're part of that. These are your victories, and we want you to enjoy them along with us. We thought we'd just give you an update about all that's going on. David, anything else you want to share before I let you go?
Yeah, I also just want to say thank you to everyone for supporting us. Like Stuart said, we can't do it without you. Each one of these victories, it's got your name on it. Just as much as our clients. And so we're thankful for that. And we're just so blessed to be able to do this work for God and his kingdom.
Thank you, David, for being here today. If you'd like to be part of the work that we do, just look for the big red Give button up at the top of firstlibertylive.com. And you've already heard me say thank you and David say thank you. But on behalf of all of us here at First Liberty, thank you in advance for helping us do this important work to defend religious freedom in America. First Liberty, we are the religious freedom people.